The first car we're going to look at is Ray Ballew's Ford Gasser called the Bad Alibi. Now this is unusual because normally you see a 55 Chevy Gasser. This time it's a Ford with Ford horsepower. You can see this thing doesn't have an exotic setup under the hood, but it's definitely got plenty of power. It's 4-speed transmission. It's got some cool paint on the roof. You got the painted steel wheels, painted spokes on the front, great stance, a really good looking car. Next up is a really special car. This is a 69 Camaro Copo 427, and it came from the factory with 456 gears and a 4-speed transmission. This is an extremely rare combination, even amongst the Copo cars. Not many came with 456 gears. You'll see it's in Dover white. The original paint's still hanging on. All the old decals are still there, including some great event decals from the Gator Nationals and other NHRA events. You'll see some sponsor decals here, and you'll see Mills Auto Repair on the quarter panels. All that stuff was there back in the 70s when this car was being raced. The only thing that's changed in recent years is that the Keystone wheels have been taken off, and the original style steel wheels and dog dish caps have been put back on this car. But you'll see that it does have M&H Superstock slicks on the back. This thing is just like it would have raced back in the day. Even under the hood is pretty much as it was left. Not restored, not dressed up in any way. This is just like it was left when this car was taken off the racetrack many years ago. This car was delivered to Brooks Chevrolet in Millen, Georgia, and Johnny Norrell is this car's proud owner, and he displays it at many different shows. It's not drag racing anymore, but it's on display, and it's got a great story to tell because all this stuff is original to the car. Inside, you'll see a blue interior with original bucket seats. The upholstery in this thing is immaculate. You'll see that it doesn't have a console. It just has a 4-speed shifter sticking up out of the floor. And then you'll also notice this car was ordered without a radio. Very cool that this survived all these years. This Model A Ford Coupe pulling a single axle trailer with a chassis research front engine dragster on the back of it. And these two cars have been put together very thoughtfully. You'll see that this dragster has a lot of history. This thing has been put away for decades. It was actually hung from the rafters of a 50s style restaurant for years, and it lost a few parts along the way, but it is very close to being put back to its original glory. And we see we've got documentation here because this car was actually featured in the February 1964 issue of Hot Rod magazine. But I find it very interesting that it was featured in 1964 because it's a very antiquated chassis design, and then of course the engine. This is an old Ford flathead. There's not a whole lot of technology going on here. It had an old style blower. It had old style everything. So very interesting that this car was getting some recognition. And you can see a lot of the pieces that were in this magazine article are still on this car today. This car started with a chassis research frame. You'll see that the front suspension has been modified from some of those early chassis research cars. It has a much more standard front axle setup. And these are all Kent Fuller components. The front axle, the shocks, and even the wheels are Kent Fuller. Very high-end pieces for the day. Out back, it's got an early Ford rear end that's been narrowed significantly to fit inside the chassis. And then outside, it's got magnesium Halibran wheels. These are the smooth wheels, no windows. These are very early, very hard to find, and these are in immaculate condition. And they're mounted to a set of US Royal recap slicks. So these 8 2015 slicks, you'll see in the article it says it had 8 2015s. That's still what it has today. So this thing was originally put together by Richard Blackman and Jim Albert. And their whole idea for building this was to experiment with engine combinations, and they were going to produce a dual overhead cam conversion for Ford flathead V8s. Definitely a high-end modification on an antiquated engine combination. So to my knowledge, they never put the dual overhead cams on this combination, but it does have Edelbrock aluminum heads on it. It's got a Scott blower with 3 two-barrel carburetors on there. It's got a body that was built by Bob Sorrell. The interior was by Tony Nancy, some big names in drag racing back in the day. And this thing has got so many cool pieces already, and they're looking for just a few more to finish it out. So the dragster itself is obviously a very cool piece, but you'll see that it's sitting on a very old school single axle trailer. That's another piece of the puzzle here, as it's set up to pull behind this Model A Ford. This thing is cool too. It's chopped, it's channeled, it's got a small block Chevy, wide white wall tires, a lot of old school pieces. So when you see this combination together, I mean, it is just too cool. You can see that this might be an aftermarket body. I can see some things that are a little different than original, like the windshield's a little different. I don't know exactly the full history on this thing, but it's got a really cool Pro Street look. It's painted orange. It's got weld wheels on it. It's got giant rear tires, and it's got a really stout looking big block in there. And then sitting right next to it is a car with matching colors, so I'm assuming they're related. But this thing is really neat because it's got some extremely rare front wheels on it. This altered Roadster, it has a big block too, but what I was really looking at is the Kreitz front wheels on this car. These are spindle mount wheels, and they were a competitor to American Racing, who was making a 12-spoke spindle mount wheel out of magnesium. Well, these were made out of aluminum, and they were just a little bit different design. They looked a little more like a wagon wheel, but they're extremely rare. You hardly ever run across a set of these, and the ones on this car are in excellent condition. The 62 Buick Special. Now, these are relatively small cars compared to some of the big Buick sedans, so they made for really good drag cars with the right modifications. But this one has a 308 cubic inch combination. It's also got some really rare parts. It's got rare aluminum cylinder heads. This is from a 1964 only. It's got 13.6 to 1 compression. Those cylinder heads I mentioned have been race ported by Joe Mondello. This thing has got all sorts of really cool old school parts. You'll see it's got white headers on it. It's got finned Offenhauser valve covers on there. And then overall this car is dressed in 1960s and 70s style. It's got slotted mags. Nothing real crazy on the back. It looks like maybe about a 9-inch wide slick back there. Some cool stripes. You can see the back has been modified a little bit. The back bumper has been removed. This is a cool old race car with some really rare parts on it. Here's another vintage drag car. This is a 69 Plymouth Barracuda, and we look inside of here and we see those original type bucket seats. Original type interior throughout, but it does have a roll bar. The back seat has been eliminated, and then this car has a pretty slick paint job on it with some scallops, and look at this. 426 based Hemi. This thing's probably well over 500 cubic inches. It's got a cross ram with 2 Holley 4-barrel carburetors, and look at those valve covers. Any Hemi build, it's going to cost you a lot of money. But this thing's got a cool look, cool stance. Isaac approves of it. It's got those Krager SS wheels on there, giant 14-inch wide slicks on the back. A really great looking Mopar race car. Here's another one in the historic area. This is the world's wildest Woody. This is built by K&W Motorsports. It's based off of a 1940 Ford Woody. You can see the wild purple paint job, the wood paneling on the side. But the really crazy part is the 426 based Keith Black Hemi that sits right behind the driver. This thing is set up to do wheel stands the length of the quarter mile. You can see it has a Mooneyham blower sitting up on top of that Hemi, an Enderley hat, and there's even nitrous oxide to go along with all the boost. This is a wild setup. And as we make our way around, you can see that driver's compartment. This would be crazy to drive this car because you notice it's got a lot of levers. That's for the brakes. That's for when this thing is up on the back tires, you can still steer it. And also notice that there's not a whole lot of floorboard action here, so you can see where you're going. Next is what appears to be a run-of-the-mill rear-engine dragster. It looks like your typical 90s style build, although it does have wire spoke wheels on the front, which is kind of indicative of an earlier car. So this could have been a 70s or 80s build that was updated through the years. You can see it does have a later model cage, but this thing is set up for super comp racing. It's got a pretty healthy big block with a Dominator carburetor on it. And as we go to the back, that's where it gets really interesting because this car does not have a Ford 9-inch based rear end. It actually has a Dana 60. This appears to be a magnesium center section which was cast by Henry's Machine and used in Ram Charger's Pro Stock cars in the early 70s. Now Henry's also made them and sold them on their own, so they did end up in quite a few drag cars over the years, but you hardly ever see one of these in the wild, and you definitely don't see one being used in a somewhat modern rear-engine dragster. Hanging from the ceiling is one of Don Garlett's Swamp Rat dragsters, and this has got a pretty interesting story. Of course, I always research old drag cars, and this is Swamp Rat number 15. This is the car that was built after Don Garlett's had his famous clutch explosion that cut the car in half and severed part of his foot and led to the development of the rear-engine dragster. So he was building the rear-engine dragster. He never could get it to handle the way he wanted it, so he went back to the shop and built another front-engine dragster. Well, his wife came out there and caught him in the act, said, "You're not going to go back out there in this front engine car and kill yourself." So he put this car to the side, finished building the rear engine dragster and refined it and finally got it to work right. And this Swamp Rat number 15 was never raced. It was completed and it was actually sold to Goodyear as a display vehicle. They kept it for a few years and gave it back to Don, and he ultimately cleaned it back up and sent it up to McDonough, Georgia when Summit was building this building. So it's been up there for quite a while, and it's definitely a cool piece of drag racing history, although it never made a pass. But this was a drag car in the 60s and 70s, and they brought this thing back. You can see they've added some lettering, the colored windows. It's got a Lakewood 3-point bar in there, the Grump Lump style hood scoop on there, tilt front end. This thing's got all the cool tricks from the 70s. It's got slotted mag wheels. It's got wheelie bars on there, and he for sure needs them. This thing is rowdy. It's got a small block, tunnel ram and 2.4s, and it's got a 4-speed in it, and he drives this thing super hard. Some of the cool stuff to me are the chrome control arms. You can see it's got a chain that limits the travel on the front suspension. A lot of these parts were added in the 60s, but this isn't just a used up old race car. This thing gets down the track and it puts on a show. Next up is a slick 69 Camaro in Hugger Orange. You can see those black hockey stick stripes. You got lettering on the side, but what's really cool about this car is the engine. This is a ZL1 based 427. Now these engines were not really NHRA friendly, but they added a new class just a couple years ago called AAA stock. So this class was made for cars like this. This is a 69 Camaro with a ZL1 spec engine, although you'll see it does have a cast iron block instead of the aluminum, and that's just for durability and price. And we'll see on the quarter panel, it's got lettered on there, Second Hand Power Speed Shop. And they have thousands of parts for hot rods, drag cars, anything that goes fast, they got parts for it. And they use a lot of those parts on this car. And this thing is a stout combination. It's got a full cage. It's got some vintage pieces here and there. But for the most part, this is a modern day NHRA legal AAA stock automatic drag car. This is an early Nova. You can see it's got a tilt front end. It's got those rear wheel wells moved forward just a little bit. And the most interesting part to me is underneath that hood is a fuel injected 409 combination. You hardly ever see a 409 in a Chevy 2. You certainly don't see that many W motors out there being drag raced. And he was beating on this one pretty hard. It's a neat combination, stick shift car, really cool vintage style build. Now this one hit pretty close to home for me. This is a Henry J gasser, and this thing is super clean, super slick build. Looks like a very fresh car. This belongs to Rory Campbell, and it is slick. You can see it's got a ton of hand lettering on it, lots of little tricks inside and out. The front axle's been moved forward a little bit. You can see the rear wheel openings are radius just right. Wheelie bars on the back, fender well headers. It's got all the right pieces. And when you look inside of this thing, this is not just a pieced together old car. This is a professionally built race car. Look at the seat covers on those Kirky aluminum seats. This thing is slick. Very nicely detailed car, and it was real fast too. He ran with the straight axle Mafia, and this car was running low 6s in the 8th mile. Here's another straight axle Mafia car, this time a little Anglia, and this one's called the Golden Angel 2, and it's a replication of a car that ran in the Louisville, Kentucky area back in the 60s. Unfortunately, that car was destroyed in a crash, and it ended up killing the driver, Ed Payne. But this is a very nice tribute to that car. You can see the Powell's Service Center lettering on the door. It's got slotted mags on it, fender well headers. It's got all the right pieces. And you'll see that this one isn't sitting super high up in the air. It's right down low. The car works good. It's a very good representation of what gassers used to be. The pits were absolutely packed with cool gassers and all sorts of different race cars. We see some Chevrolet race cars here. We got an old coupe and then a Chevy 2 two-door sedan. You can see the Tin Man lettering, lots of lettering and cool paint work on this one, good pinstriping as well. And then you got the Beast 55 Chevy over here sporting the American flag. I absolutely love old Corvette race cars. These things look so cool, and you just don't see them very often anymore because most of these things have been restored back to original. This one looks like it's straight out of the 80s. It's got a killer setup. It's got that hardwood square scoop on it. Good stance. You can see the headers poking out underneath. I don't know if that paint's been on there for lots of years, but either way, it's a great looking race car, and he was running it hard. Now here's a cool funny car. This one's from the 70s. This is Ed McCulloch's Revolution funny car. You can see the English leather sponsorship there. And this car has a lot of cool details, including some hand-painted lettering. That's a lot of hand painting to do on such a big canvas. And this car's got some big old slicks on the back. You can see they've custom lettered the M&H and the Ace. Big blown and injected Hemi engine combination. And you can see the evolution here on the chassis design compared to those Camaros. This thing is like a rocket ship. And these cars evolved very quickly throughout the 70s. This is a good example of that. Our good friend Jim Mize and his two sons were on hand, and he had two cars on display in the historic area. One was this dragster we're looking at now, and another was an Anglia Gasser. Both cars have early small Hemis, and we're not talking about 392s. We're talking like 200 and something cubic inches. These things are really cool, mechanically fuel injected, very authentically built. He built a lot of the stuff himself in his own garage. He's a very talented guy and one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. Next up is a 63 Chevrolet Biscayne. Now this is the bottom of the line for Chevrolet's offerings in 1963. It's a two-door sedan, and these things were light, they were stripped down, they didn't have a lot of accessories, but this is what you do with it if you're going to go fast. You'd put a 409 with dual quads, check out the big headers, and the really rare air cleaner that's fed by the cowl. That's a really unusual piece. But just back up and look at this thing. Chrome reverse wheels, pie crust slicks on the back. This is a really cool combination. And when you look inside of it, it's bone stock. All red interior. There's not a whole lot to see here. There's no roll bar, no bunch of crazy speed parts or anything. Just a stripped out interior. And then on the outside, there's a few little accessories like the toe tabs on the front. And then, of course, the chrome reverse wheels really stand out on this bright red finish. And then all the signage on this car. A lot of these are decals, but still really cool on a 60s style build. This 1940 Willis Gasser is part of the S&S racing team. They always have at least one or two cars on display. And this one is an iconic 60s Gasser. You can see it's got B gas designations on it. It's got magnesium wheels front and back. Just a really cool stance. Good setup on this car, but when you look on the inside, it does have some somewhat modern bucket seats, a little bit of street rod action here with the steering column and the gauges, but it does have a full roll cage in it, and the thing that got my attention are those American Le Mans magnesium front wheels. No matter what kind of gasser you like, there's plenty of options at the Nostalgia Nationals, including this old Chevy. This is my buddy Bob. He's got 540 cubic inches of big block Chevy power. And check out that paint job. This thing is slick. Even though now it kind of just looks like a street car, this car has some tremendous drag racing history. You can see it's got Stagecoach, Bowling Green, Kentucky on the quarter glass. And then on the door glass here, it's got Weibull competition. Now, if you were involved in stock eliminator drag racing in the 60s and 70s, you knew the name Jim Weibull. He was a famous drag racer. He raced one of the Smothers Brothers cars, and he did a lot of great work on these things. And this is a product of that. This car was driven by Dickie Ogles back in the day, and it's still alive today, being driven on the streets of Kentucky. And check this out. 426 Hemi in a Dodge Dart. That was a lethal combination back in the 60s and 70s. And this one's got a really cool look to it. And as we move on, we see a 68 Plymouth Barracuda called the Super Cuda. Very slick paint job on this car. And as we make our way around, again, a 426 based Hemi engine, this time with a billet-topped cross ram setup, 2 Holley carburetors. This is a serious setup that was running on a 9-flat index. Here's another Mopar running on that 9-flat index, the High Adventure Hemi. Look under the hood of this thing. This thing has a serious Hemi combination. It's got a sheet metal intake with 2 4s, very slick paint job on it with some nice lettering, and of course that iconic super stock hood scoop. It doesn't get much better than this. Well, here, this is Bruce Larson's USA 1 Camaro funny car, and this thing is restored perfectly. You can see it's got a Logie chassis, big block Chevy, blown and injected. This is a killer setup, and you can see the paintwork on this car is immaculate. The metal work, there's so many great pieces here, and it's all 100% period correct. And this one is a really good example of that transition from early funny cars into the more sophisticated funny cars of the 1970s. Another cool funny car, very similar situation to the USA 1 car, is the Dixie Twister of Houston Platt. Now, Houston was famous for his Chevrolet drag cars, and he had a lot of different styles of cars, and he got started in the AFX class and worked his way up into these full-on funny cars, and this car was one of his finest pieces. This is a 70 Camaro. You can see blown and injected, big block Chevy. It's got beautiful magnesium wheels that are painted gold. You can see the paintwork on this thing is absolutely top notch. The details are incredible. This thing has a cool ramp truck to go along with it too. Up next is the Swamp Fox, not to be confused with the Swamp Rat. Take a look at this. Early Hemi, Mickey Thompson valve covers, beautifully polished supercharger and injector hat, magneto sticking up, zoomy headers, magnesium wheels with M&H slicks. This is the absolute perfect 1960s dragster. You can see him wiping it off here. A beautifully detailed car. Check out that very unusual butterfly steering wheel. That's kind of before the typical butterfly came out. Diamond stitched interior, just a very nicely detailed car. You can see by the wheelbase of this car that this is sort of a mid to late 60s design. It's before they got extremely long and certainly before they went to the rear engine. And this thing has some excellent details. You can see the paint and lettering is very simple and very clean. Lots of polished pieces. A very beautiful front engine dragster. Hey, what do you know? Another Henry J. I found another one here in the pits. This one's called Harry Canary, and it's got a fuel-injected small block Chevy. I didn't get to see this one run, but it's a pretty cool looking car. You can see it's tubbed in the back. It's got a little bit of a mixture of new and old, but still cool because it's a Henry J. But then next to it in the pits was a real deal old school drag car Henry J. You can see the lettering still on it, the bright yellow paint, and when we look inside you can see it has huge engine setback way back into the cockpit there. You can see it's got modern bucket seats, modern shifter, detachable steering wheel, good looking sheet metal on the inside. Then when we get around on the side here, we can see Honest Abe lettered on the doors. You can see it's got a little scoop that goes all the way back to the windshield, and they were running with the straight axle Mafia. If you've seen any of my videos, you know I love a good old school drag car survivor, and this is the perfect example. This thing is shiny and slick and it looks like a recreation, but it's not. This is original to the 1970s, and look at the inside of there. It's got some old gauges. It's got a super old shifter in there, and look at the lettering on this thing. This is slick and clean and beautiful. This car came from the Chicago area, and look under the hood. This is a 427 based big block Chevy. It's got Snowflake GM aluminum heads, tunnel ram, 2 Hollies, big velocity stacks. This car has got some serious horsepower. It's got Super Trick wheels on the front, steel wheels on the back, and it was for sale. Sitting next to it was a really cool drag car. This is a 1958 Corvette. This car was previously campaigned by Tommy and Jan Jones out of Section, Alabama. Unfortunately, Tommy passed away and this car got sold and it ended up in Kentucky, and now it belongs to Ronnie Jones. No relation there, but Ronnie owns this car now and he's still getting it out and showing it. It's also been in a museum for a little while, but I'm glad to see it out in the daylight. This thing has made lots and lots of passes down drag strips in Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia, and it's just a really cool car with a lot of neat history. All the way in the back of the pits, we ran across an old friend with this really cool Kellison funny car. This is Zorro's Charger, and all this paint that you see here has been on there for many, many years, well over 55 years. This thing has got a lot of cool vintage pieces, but it's also got some modern stuff that allows him to compete in the 1/8 mile and 1/4 mile competition. Very cool historic drag car. Have I mentioned that I love Corvette drag cars? This thing is so cool. It's got a serious big block tunnel ram, 2 Dominators. You look inside of here, it's got an early version of a funny car style cage, some aluminum pieces filling in the dash, but a wood grain steering wheel. That's a nice touch. But you look here, these stickers, these are from the Sports Nationals, from all sorts of different NHRA events from the 80s and 90s. You can see some hand lettering back there, big tires on the back, wheelie bars, parachute, everything you want in an old school Corvette drag car. Now here's a pretty interesting car. This old Chevy, it's got a lot of cool lettering on it, including on the doors it says Gene Schwartz, NHRA record holder, 1964 to 1967, 1966 NHRA National Class Champion, 1965 NASCAR Nationals Class Champion in Street Eliminator, and this car and its driver is still active to this day, and it's quoted as the only original gasser car driver and owner from the 60s left in the country still racing today. It's a really neat looking piece, and he was beating on it pretty hard. One of my favorite styles of race car is early pro stock cars. And I also really like Plymouth Dusters, Dodge Demons, and some of the Dodge Darts from that era. And this is a great example. This thing's got a killer stance. You see the wheel wells have been cut way out on the back. It's got magnesium motor wheel fly wheels, and they're lifting the hood off right now so that we can see that 426 based Hemi engine underneath that big old snorkel scoop. You see lots of aluminum paneling in here. This is a very nice restoration on this car. You can see Max Hurley Automotive, and this car is immaculate, a beautiful representation of early 70s pro stock. This 32 Ford 3-window coupe might be the ultimate estate sale find. This car has drag racing history dating back to 1968. It had a big block Chevy in it, and it was known for its wheel stands. And we're going to take a look at this car's excellent condition today and look at some of the pictures of this thing in action back in the 60s and early 70s. It's an iconic hot rod, an iconic drag car, and it recently found a new home after about 50 years in storage. So this car was originally the brainchild of brothers Bud and Bob Heineman and Ron Jordan. They put their heads together to create a killer drag car in 1968. In fact, June 15th of 1968 is when the lettering was applied on this car, officially naming it the Judge. And the reason we know that is because of a court case where Bud Heineman went up against General Motors because of the use of the name the Judge. Now, you probably are familiar with the GTO the Judge, and this 32 Ford was also named the Judge. A very interesting detail here is that June 15th is when the Judge was lettered on this 32 Ford, and July 19th of 1968 is when Pontiac named the GTO package the Judge. So an odd coincidence here led to a legal case, but I'm glad that happened because some of these details are listed here in this case. So we see there in 1968, that's when this car really gained its identity, and that's when this car got real serious. So this car ran a 427 based big block Chevy, tunnel ram, and 2.4s. It was the ultimate drag car of the late 60s. You can also see that the ride height was super high. This was a very aggressive ride height, even for a gasser in the 1960s. And the big block Chevy was sitting way up in the air, and this thing was known for its wheel stands because of that weight transfer. So this car went from the blue paint job to the two-tone orange and white paint job, and that's when everything transitioned from the Judge to King Speed Shop. Now that was a joint effort from Bud Heineman and Ron Jordan. They owned this speed shop together, and they had a tremendous team of drag cars that were sponsored by King Speed Shop. You can see in some of these promotional pictures, all the cars had matching paint jobs, they had matching lettering. This was a top-of-the-line operation. They had a really good business model going, they were making good money, they were going out and racing. They were pretty much living the dream in the 60s and early 70s. The King Speed Shop was based out of Lansing, Illinois, but these guys raced all over the place. They raced in Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin. Anywhere there was a good paying race, these guys went and represented with this car and the other team cars. So this 32 Ford became known for its great appearance and its great performance. It ran in the B gas class most of the time, although you will see some pictures of it here listed in C altered. Now, I'm not sure if the different combination there or if it was just a different rules package for the track they were running at, but that was pretty common back in the day for guys to switch from gas class to altered class. You can see in the later pictures of this car that they really had the nose down low, which was very common. A lot of the gassers of the 60s got lowered down in the early 70s just to be more aerodynamic. By this point, tire technology had changed a lot, and everybody's idea of weight transfer had changed a lot. So putting the nose down on the ground was a very common thing, and we can see it here. Even though the paint job is still the same and the wheels and tires are still the same, the ride height has changed, and it looks like it has a little bit lower profile intake manifold on it, maybe a couple of Dominators up there. I can't really tell from this picture, but you can see some things are changing with this race car. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and feel free to leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and you'll see more of my videos in the future. So by 1974, this car had sort of run its course, And a guy who worked at King's Speed Shop ended up buying it from Bud, and he had intentions of turning this thing into a street rod. So he had a local guy strip it down and repaint it in candy apple red. And the whole idea here was to go out to rod runs and car shows with this thing. And that was a very popular thing to do, was take an old, sort of outdated drag car and put it on the street. And as I got to digging for old pictures of this car, I actually found 2 pictures of it in this configuration. I was very shocked because I just assumed that this configuration didn't see the light of day, but it did. You can see it here in 2 different pictures racing a US 30 drag strip, and you can see it had lettering on the cowl, it had lettering on the door, and lettering on the quarter panel. So a cool thing that happened is when this car was purchased, it actually came a little bit closer to me. It's now in Kentucky, and I was able to go see it in person and get some real nice video of it so you can see some of the details that remain on this car. This thing is almost entirely unchanged aside from the engine and transmission being removed, and I'll show you some of the details here. So first off, you can see that candy apple red paint is still shining. Of course, it's got a little bit of dirt on it, but this thing would shine up beautifully. It's been stored indoors for all this time. It's immaculate. The body is perfect on this car. Now you can see where there was some lettering on the driver's side over here. You can see it on the quarter panel where they've rubbed it off, but it's actually affected the paint a little bit. You can see a little spot on the door as well, but you can see the fenders, the running boards, the hood, the grill shell, every piece of this thing came with the purchase, and it even came with a set of chrome big block Chevy headers that have the mufflers still attached to them, exactly what this car ran back in the 1970s. And just looking at the suspension and the steering and the frame on this car, I mean, it was a professionally built piece. You can see the chrome work is still hanging in there. It's a little bit weak, but it's still there. The chrome front axle, you can see it has coilovers on the front with adjustable mounts, and they've got it pretty low in the front. As you'll see in the old pictures, this thing went from sky high in the front to down and dirty in the front, and that's just a transformation that happened from the 60s to the 70s. And you can see it still has the rocket wheels that it had for all those years. It's still rolling on those same wheels, probably the same tires that it had back in the day. And you can see it has some chrome radius rods on the front. Those are made out of round tubing, and you can see even that has adjustable mounts so that they could raise and lower the ride height and keep the geometry the same. And we'll see that it's got a rack and pinion steering setup, which I'm not so sure that that was part of the original recipe on this thing. Rack and pinion wasn't really a thing in the 60s, and honestly it was barely a thing in the 70s. But the Pintos and Mustang IIs had rack and pinion, and that became a very popular upgrade for street rods, and I would imagine that happened in the last stages of this car's life. Underneath the back, it's got an Oldsmobile rear end, and you can see that it has been chrome plated. You can see it's got custom ladder bar mounts hanging underneath that housing, and those go up to some custom mounts on the frame. And you'll see those are made out of square tubing. They're also chrome plated, and we've got some chrome shocks on the back and parallel leaf springs. Now this car would have originally had a single transverse leaf spring. You saw the pictures of this car way up on the back bumper. So eventually they got the car tamed down. You can see through the years they changed the stance. They got the front end way down, and they put those big old 1432 slicks on the back with the rocket wheels, which are still there. It's unbelievable how untouched this car is. And when we open the door, it's even more special because it has a beautiful white vinyl interior. You can see the pleated edges, the buttons, everything about this is 1960s and 70s. And you'll see the door panels are finished out. It has chrome garnish moldings. It's got that beautiful white roll cage in there. Full roll cage, not just a little 3-point bar behind the seat. This thing had full cage, which was unusual back in the day. And you'll see that it's got a full assortment of gauges, Stewart Warner, it's got a sun tack, and then we'll see it has another tack up on the A-pillar. That's actually a vintage autometer tack, and we'll see underneath the dash it has a wiring harness, it has fuses, and it even has an autometer rev box there. That's all really unusual stuff for back in the day. Most of these things were much more crude than this. We'll also see underneath the dash, it's got chrome swing pedals. It still has the mechanical clutch linkage hanging off of that pedal. Still got a single pop master cylinder that's hooked up to that brake pedal. And you'll see that it still has a gas pedal in here too. It's got a chrome steering column, a superior 3-spoke wheel. I mean, this thing was top of the line in the 70s. Now, one extremely cool detail I noticed underneath the seat is this thing has a bar that goes underneath the seat that's connected to the roll bar, and it has a very unusual seat mount. This kind of looks like a vintage cafeteria seat mount. It's chrome, it's got custom mounts, and then you see it's got that square plate that the seat mounts to. This is a super trick idea, and it just looks super cool and clean underneath these custom bucket seats. You'll see also underneath the bucket seats, there's some other stuff. You got some little 32 Ford toy cars and another Sun tack laying under there. And then in between the seats is a vintage Craig Pioneer 8-track player. So as we back up and take a good look at this thing, just look at that stance. This thing is absolutely killer with those giant slicks on the back, the rocket wheels, the candy apple paint. I mean, it's got a really cool look just like it is. Whether it's got the fenders hanging on it or the fenders off of it like we're looking at here. I mean, this is just a super cool 32 Ford 3-window coupe. I absolutely love a good roadside find, and I especially love one that is a Henry J. Gasser. Now, this thing has had a rough life. You can see that it's wrecked in the front end. Somebody must have run this thing into the wall at the drag strip because it's got a lot of race-ready components. It's got a straight axle under it that's been chrome plated. It's a pretty nice piece, and that looks like a vintage piece, but this thing has obviously been updated in some way. You can see some of the components are new, some of them are old, but this car's got a really cool look, and it has a lot of potential because the body on this car is very solid. You can see it's got good rocker panels, the bottoms of the doors are good. It just needs a lot of work to get back up on its wheels and get back into action. But you can see this thing's got the engine set back. It's got a 9-inch forward rear end with leaf springs and traction bars. It's got some Firestone cheater slicks on the back, and the wheel wells have been cut out. And it's just a cool combination for an old school gasser. Now this is a 52, 53, or 54 based on the fact that it's got taillights in the fins and it has a deck lid. But this thing is so cool. You can see the round pipe bumper on the back that's threaded on the ends. It's got some cool pieces, including a very nice old school tack on the dash. This car has a nice roll bar in it. It's got some really nice pieces, and again, it's got a lot of potential because this is not just a 60-year-old build that somebody has stashed away for lots of years. This is a somewhat modern update on an old school gasser. So this thing is so cool. You could absolutely put this thing back on the track without a whole lot of work. Put a fresh axle under it, a fiberglass front end, a windshield, and you'll be back in business. The first thing that caught my attention was this 1963 Dodge. It's a 2-door sedan. You can see it's got mismatched wheels with red steel wheels on the back, and under the hood we've got a 426 with cross ram, 2 4s. This is a killer setup. Check out those huge exhaust manifolds. This is what you wanted in 1963 if you were going to go drag racing. You can see those cool wheels and bi-ply tires. That brings back the days of factory drag cars when you could buy a car like this and immediately take it to the drag strip. Now here's a cool drag car. This is a 1964 Chevelle. You can see that it's got pinstriping and lettering that says class of 64, and you notice they took the trim off of the doors so they'd have plenty of room for that lettering. It's got the driver number on the window. It's got a bow tie on the sail panel. It's got a little bit opened up wheel wells on the back, Keystone wheels. Got a lot of cool character from the 1970s. It was Tony McConnell's Nash Metropolitan. It's the first time this thing's been out in the public, and it's a fresh car. It's not completely functional yet as a drag car, but it's close. And you can see this thing's got a neat stance, it's got Krager wheels, and everything on this car is old. He doesn't go buy a bunch of new parts. He scrounges together old parts and makes a real traditional old school drag car out of it. This car's got a small block Ford in it, and you can see all the interior. This is all stuff that he's done. The paint works real nice on this car. It's got some cool lettering on it. And you'll see on the back it's got a wind-up key, a cool round tube bumper, some very old wheelie bars back here. These are off of an old drag car. And then if we look underneath it, it's got some really old traction bars. These are chrome plated. These things came off of a drag car, and he's been holding on to these things for years, waiting for the perfect project, and this little Nash Metropolitan was the one. One of my favorite things about this car are the headlight covers. These are Nash Metropolitan hubcaps. It's the perfect detail for an old school race car, and just look at this stance. This thing is too cool. I'm loving this Ford Ranch Wagon gasser. You don't see a whole lot of station wagons that are turned into a drag car, but this one's got a really cool look. You see it's got a little scoop on the hood, no front bumper. It's got the perfect gasser stance, and you see that lettering on the back. It says Resurrected. I love that. Here's a 55 Chevy called the Filthy 5. You can see it's got C-gas markings on it, and you can see a little bit of fake patina on this car. It's got Krager wheels on it, slicks on the back. The quarter panels have been radius for clearance, and then you can see a Hilburn style scoop sticking up out of the hood. Fender well headers. This thing's got all the right pieces for a real cool looking gasser. Shane Lyle also had his 55 Chevrolet gasser on display. You can see this one's got a little bit more of a slick paint job on it, but still a very retro theme. Good looking stance, cool scoop sticking out, fiberglass front end, fender well headers. Again, it's got all the right elements for a very cool gasser. Here's another cool example of a Tri-5 gasser, this time a 56 Chevy, and this thing's got a psychedelic paint job on it. They've taken all the trim off the sides and replaced it with crazy paint work. You see it's got lace, it's got smoke, it's got endless lines, it's got all the cool stuff, no front bumper, fender well headers, Raider wheels, and then looking up under here, check out the chrome tube axle. It's got the transverse leaf spring. This is a really neat looking setup. Alright, that's enough Chevy gassers. Now it's time for a Henry J gasser. This is Donnie Jeffries 51 Henry J, and this thing is the quintessential Henry J gasser. You can see the wheel wells have been cut out perfectly. It's got a straight axle. It's got all the right pieces. It's got some show car stuff on the inside here. It's got a bench seat with some nice upholstery. It's got a 3-point bar in there. It's got tinted windows that are just so cool. Lots of old decals, lots of hand lettering, round tube bumper on the back. This is pretty much perfect. So let's rewind the clock to January of 1960. And that's when Ron Snick bought this 55 Chevy Bel Air convertible from R&M Chevrolet in Roselle, Illinois for $1,136.33. This car was his daily transportation, and it was painted in a two-tone configuration with coral and white. And in May of 1960, just a few months after he bought it, he paid $150 to have it painted all white. And this was just the beginning of this car's customization. And then in 1961, he got married. He and Barbara Jean Snick drove away from their wedding in this car. Not only did they drive away from the wedding, they actually drove this car to Florida for their week-long honeymoon. We'll see in some of these early pictures that this thing was not starting out as a drag car. It was actually more of a mild custom. You can see it's got spotlights up there by the windshield. It originally had fender skirts on it, but those were taken off when he changed the wheels and tires out. You can see on the back of the car, it's got blue dots on the taillights, a very popular thing. And if you look at this car today, those blue dots are still there. So we'll see on some of these pictures and some of these video clips, the original modified setup on this car was more of a mild custom. You can see under the hood, it's got 3 deuces on it. And then later we'll see even more footage that shows that it had 2 4-barrel carburetors on it with a cool scoop, finned aluminum Corvette valve covers. It had some really neat stuff. So during the 1960s, Ron and Barbara brought 3 children into the world: Sherry, Todd, and Shelly Lynn. Now Shelly Lynn, that's obviously ringing a bell because that's what's on the side of this car. So if you're putting your daughter's name on the side of your drag car, she must be pretty special to you. Todd shared some really great pictures from his family photo album and even some home videos that have been digitized a few years ago, and this is just absolute treasure. These old pictures, and especially the film, I mean, it really gives you an idea of how much time they spent with this car and how involved the family was. So the family car at this point was a 62 Impala 2-door hardtop, beautiful car, and he is flat towing his 55 Chevy race car with it. So a really cool combination. Obviously the whole family could ride, the 3 kids could ride in the back seat. it was a cool combination whether you're going to the car show or to the drag strip. And I love this video because you can see the flagman jump up and down, you can see the cars take off, and the chase vehicle is actually hanging with that 55 for a pretty good ways, and then finally he's really starting to stretch its legs out here on the top end. Just a cool piece of video from back in this car's early days. And we'll see the car show setup was pretty elaborate. They had toolboxes, they had trophies, they had all sorts of cool stuff that went on display with the car. He even had a set of steel wheels and slicks that he would put on display with the car, and the show setup on this thing had a set of Mickey Thompson polished wheels, beautiful combination. It had white walls on the front, and it had some M&H Racemaster tires on the back, and they took this thing everywhere. But then he got more and more serious about drag racing, so here are some of the modifications he did during the 1960s. He installed a roll bar in this car. This is 4-inch round pipe, and you can see he didn't have a bender. This was just pieced together. Obviously not something that would pass tech today, but it was just fine back in the 60s. He put spacers in the control arms, and that allowed the weight to transfer a little better to the rear wheels. He moved the rear leaf springs inboard of the frame rails to provide more room for tires and wheels. He got rid of the original Chevrolet rear end and put in a 57 Olds rear, which he welded up the spider gears on and installed a set of 557 gears in it. Now we'll see in some of these early pictures at the drag strip, it had some really crazy looking collectors on those headers, a very wild looking setup, and those later got changed for more conventional fender well headers. So then Ron got with Bob Coughlin and Don McClory, and they completely stripped the interior out of the car, replacing it with just sheet metal on the door panels and other interior panels. They also modified some bucket seats to put in this car. You can see that they have very low backs. They're a very wide and flat bucket seat. So you can see on the dash, instead of a radio, it's got a couple of Stewart Warner gauges. And then instead of the heater controls, it's got a little blockout panel. You can see there's a toggle switch on the dash that's for the magneto, and you can see a push button in place of the original ignition switch. So he also removed the original steel front sheet metal, replacing it with a one-piece fiberglass front end. Then he radiused the rear wheel wells. He did that with a saw, and it's a little bit crude, but that's just how they did it back then. And then he removed the gas tank and spare tire well, boxed the firewall in, and moved the engine back. I mean, this was getting pretty serious here at this point. So that first paint job that happened in 1960 was 150 bucks. The one that happened in 1970 by Pete Kramer was probably a little more than that, but it's still hanging on to this day. You can see on there 321D gas, Ron Snick lettered on the door, Shelley Lynn lettered on the quarter panel, Snick Automotive Limited, Itasca, Illinois lettered on the quarter panel, paint by Pete. I mean, there's so much really nice, tasteful lettering going on with this thing. If you look back on the deck lid, there's even more lettering. You've got the Gophers listed there, Todd, Sherry, and Shelley. And then we've got a neat little character there saying 55's forever, only the strong survive. And then over on the right side of the deck lid, we've got the pit crew, Don, Bob, Barb, and Joe. Later on, he even removed the front brakes altogether for weight-saving purposes. So we're talking about a pretty hefty 55 Chevy that's stopping with just 57 Olds drum brakes on the back. Around this time is also where the engine combination got a little more serious. So the whole time this car was a drag car, it was small block Chevy powered. In its most potent combination, it had a steel crank, pink rods, and it had angle plug Fuelie cylinder heads on it. And up top was an Enderley mechanical fuel injection with a Vertex magneto. So this combination ran pretty well, but it never made a full pass down the drag strip. In fact, it broke a valve on the very first pass and damaged the cylinder head and damaged the piston, and the car was never really the same after that. He ran it a few more times and took it to some car shows in the 1970s, and then ended up parking the car around 1975. By far, my favorite picture out of the Snick family photo album is this one. This is from McCormick Place in downtown Chicago. This is an indoor car show, and just look at this setting. The car is set up there. They've got a really cool board there with the information on it. And the three kids, they've grown up a little bit now. This is the mid-70s, but you've got Todd, Sherry, and Shelley Lynn posing with this car. These are the coolest kids you've ever seen. Well, in 1980, Todd was growing up, he was in high school, and he was into hot rods and fast cars, so he took this car and started drag racing it again. So he was running low 12s in this car. He took the 4-speed transmission out of it and put a turbo 400 in it. He put nitrous on this car, and he ran it like that for a little while. It ran in the 11s with the automatic and the nitrous setup, but it was very hard to stop, so he ended up putting a set of disc brakes on the front of the car. Then he parked it for a few years, and then in 1989 he pulled it out again to drive away from his wedding. Here's another priceless picture from the family collection. This is Todd and his new bride Jackie getting into the 55 on their wedding day in 1989. Another special memory in this car, another special milestone. Then 30 years later, Todd's oldest son Cody used the car to drive away from his wedding. He also used the car for a gender reveal burnout when they had their first child in 2020. Quite possibly this car's biggest milestone was in 1997. Now this thing had been in hiding for a few years, but they brought it back out, got it running and driving again, got it cleaned up again, just in time for Ron Snick to drive Shelly Lynn to her wedding. What a big moment for this very special car. And then unfortunately Ron Snick passed away in 2016. So this car again was on display there at his funeral, and it brought back a lot of emotions for Barbara. Obviously brought back a lot of emotions for the kids because they had grown up and had lives of their own, and this car remained as one of those really huge staples in their lives. Unfortunately, Shelly Lynn also passed away in October of 2023. So obviously that was a very tough time for the Snick family, but it makes this car mean even more to them. And Todd continues to drive this thing. He's continuing to tweak on that setup so that he can use the car a little bit more. For instance, he took the 557 gears out of the rear end and put a set of 373s in there with a posi unit instead of the welded up Spider gears, and he's also given it a more mild-mannered small block engine. So this thing's got a single carburetor on it. There's nothing real crazy going on inside of the engine, but it runs good, it sounds good through those fender well headers. This car's got the right look, and it's got plenty of horsepower to do what Todd wants to do with it. Even though Ron Snick passed away, and this car's namesake, Shelly Lynn, passed away, this car is in good hands with Todd. He cherishes this thing. It's a member of his family, and it's always been there for him. He has always known this car. He's been inside and outside of this thing, underneath it, on top of it. Everything you can do to this car, he's been there and he's done it. He's lived with this car and he's lived for this car for many years, and he continues to keep this thing together and continues to tell its story. And I'm so happy that he told this car's story to me and allowed me to tell this car's story to you. And the one that jumps out to me is this 63 two-door post Chevrolet, and the reason why it stands out is because it has an actual 409 under the hood. You can see all the markings on the outside, but very rarely do you see somebody use a 409 based engine because they're finicky, they're hard to deal with, they don't last a long time, and they don't make quite as much power as a conventional big block Chevy or small block Chevy in certain cases. But in this case, Rob Walden, who's the son of Lamar Walden, he knows his way around a 409 engine, and he's built a serious combination for the Superstock class. One of the most traditional cars in this group is this 57 Chevy, and this particular one has a very traditional engine combination. It's got an old school small block with a cross ram intake manifold, 2 4s. This is not your typical Southeast Gassers combination, but it runs really good. It's a small cubic inch combination. It runs in the C gas category, which is 10 pounds per cubic inches. So let's say it's a 3,000 pound car. That means it's 300 cubic inches or less. And this thing screams, it makes a lot of good power, and it even has a very old school suspension style. Now, all these cars are required to have vintage style suspension, but this one has a transverse leaf spring instead of parallel leafs. So this is like a 32 Ford style front axle and spring setup, and it even has vintage Ford split wishbones. And this is just a really traditional 60s style suspension setup, and it even has some cool chains to limit the front suspension travel. This is a great historical piece that shows what drag racing was really like in the 60s. Here's another cool Seagas car, this time an early Corvette, and this thing's got a great stance, slotted mags, and it's got some very nice lettering. You see that gold leaf with the shadows. I mean, somebody did some killer work there. It's got a really cool looking hand-formed aluminum scoop, and as we back up here, you can see this thing has a great gasser stance. The next car we're going to look at is from the B gas category, which these cars are required to weigh 8 pounds per cubic inch. And that makes this a very competitive class. The racing is really tight in this class, and it creates some great combinations. Now, this particular car is a 33 Willys sedan delivery. It's got a mechanically fuel-injected small block Chevy, obviously a 4-speed transmission, because all cars in the Southeast Gassers Association have to have a 4-speed transmission. And you can see this thing is named Loose Cannon, and this car typically lives up to that name because it's unpredictable. Short wheelbase, these things launch super hard. You never know which direction they're going to go, which is part of the reason why people love to watch these cars. Here's another personal favorite from the B-Gas category. This is a 37 or 38 Chevrolet sedan. You can see it's got a slick paint job, nice little subtle lettering. You can see it's got a sheet metal scoop up there, and it has a one-way technology 374 cubic inch engine under the hood. Now, if there was a best appearing or best engineered award, this 41 Willys would take it, in my opinion. This car is beautiful. The details on it, the paint job, the lettering, and of course it has a Gene Fulton big block. Let's see another one of those Edelbrock tunnel rams, 2 Holley 4-barrels, magnesium wheels. Every detail on this car is beautiful. The fit and finish is right on the money. This thing has a lot of great details on the inside as well. You can see about the only not old school thing that I'm seeing in here is the tachometer. Everything else on this car looks like it came straight out of a 1960s hot rod magazine. This is a top-notch gasser. Here's a little closer look at another A-gas car. This is Ben Christopher's Chevy 2, and you can see with the front end up and the door off of it, you can see the skeleton of this thing. This is not just an old pieced-together car. This is a fine-tuned chassis with a fine-tuned Jason-line big block, tunnel ram 2.4s, the whole combination. You can see inside it's all business. This is a very lightweight car and a very competitive car in the A-gas class. Now, this car is an Anglia that has a chopped top, and it has a very interesting engine because the H-gas class is geared towards 6 cylinders, 4 cylinders, and even flathead Ford V8s. And this particular car has a Pontiac 4-cylinder, which is essentially a half of a 389 engine. That means that aftermarket cylinder heads are an option. You got lots of different combinations for bore and stroke that make these things really rev to the moon. In this particular car, this thing has some cool history too. So as I've seen this car progress, I knew that Zach Hall was originally the one who dragged this thing out and started putting it back together. And judging by the body modifications and the old paint that was on it, I knew this thing had some great drag racing history. And I stumbled across an old picture of this car from Bristol in 1980 at the Fall Bracket Nationals. And you can see very clearly that the top is chopped in the same manner. This car has the same attitude. And that really put all the pieces together because this car was actually based out of West Virginia, and in this configuration it ran a 340 base Mopar engine with an automatic transmission. It was just a bracket car by this point, but previously this thing actually had a blown Hemi engine. It was set up for AA gas, and it was built by Buck Travis, also out of West Virginia. Unfortunately, the car never really got to hit the track in that blown Hemi configuration. But then Rick Austin bought it from Buck and put his engine and transmission in it and went drag racing with it in the 70s and 80s and ultimately sold the car, and it was dismantled from there. But it's so cool that this thing ended up back on the track, especially with the Southeast Gassers group, because there's a lot of cool cars and a lot of period correct cars, but there are very few cars that have actual drag racing history. Now, this thing is the Carcraft Magazine Super Cat. This was a legitimate magazine car back in the day, and this thing has been restored beautifully. You can see the markings on the windshield. This car ran in Super Stock F. It had a 428 cubic inch engine in it. These things made big time horsepower, and they were really fast in these Mercury Cougars. So the really special part about this car is the Coca-Cola sponsorship. In fact, this was actually a sweepstakes that you could win this car. This car was engineered and built by Dino Don Nicholson, and they say it was valued at over $7,000, which was a lot back in 1969. But this thing could be won through a Coca-Cola sweepstakes. So this was a really neat piece, and this car is restored absolutely to the T. Krager wheels, Goodyear polyglass on the front, some slicks on the back, slapper bars. It's got all the right stuff, the cool paint, the cool lettering, the cool decals. It has it all. This is a 1970 Plymouth Superbird, which is a pretty rare car to begin with. It's an R code 426 Hemi car, and only about 70 Hemi Superbirds were made. 40 of them were automatics, but the really crazy thing about this car is the wild psychedelic paint job. This was done by Hank Z in 1974, and it's still hanging on today. This car's got 1,500 miles, and it was a drag car its entire life. This car raced at US 30 Dragway in Pennsylvania. This car was sold new at Carl Gould Incorporated in Vestal, New York, and it raced with a Sox and Martin Hemi, replacing the original 426 Hemi, which still exists, but it is no longer in the car. This car was raced by Tim Richards, and it has all the paperwork, including the original build sheet and all the old time slips from back in the day. And of course, there's a lot of stories around this car, and it is completely unrestored. This thing has Keystone front runners, some big old steel wheels, and Phoenix slicks on the back. The stance is rowdy, and obviously the paint on this thing is out of this world. These cars already were wild looking with the pointy nose and the big wing on the back, but when you have a psychedelic paint job, a mismatched tire and wheel combination, and a 426 Hemi under the hood, it makes for a real head-turning combination. Oh, and you got to check out the mural on the back. You got the coyote chasing the Roadrunner through the desert, of course. All this stuff was done many, many years ago. 1974, over 50 years ago, all of this paintwork was applied on this car, and it's still hanging in there this day. It's looking good, and this car is pretty well known in the muscle car world, and it was on display at the McCacken show a few years ago, and it was such a big hit that they actually made a die cast of this exact car. So really neat piece. I'm glad I got to see this thing in person. I'd heard about it, I'd seen pictures of it, but seeing it in real life really put in perspective how well this car had been preserved. This is the real deal from the 1960s. You can see H&H Racing Team lettered on the quarter panels. Now H&H was Tom Hands and then Ed and Jim Halfling. They were partners on this build. Most of the work was done by Tom Hands. This thing has got some trick pieces on it. The front suspension on this car is quarter elliptical leaf springs on a straight axle. It's a wild combination where the leaf springs are actually forward of the axle. It's crazy looking, but apparently it worked pretty good. On the back, it's got another pair of quarter elliptical leaf springs and then an old Pontiac old style rear end with some big time deep gears in there. Right now he's running 538s, but he's got plans to run a 557. It's previously run 614 gears. I mean, this thing is a crazy cool C-gas prepared car. You can see that the engine's been set way back, actually 11 inches to be exact. They've cut out the firewall, built an aluminum shroud around it, and this thing's got a killer small block in it. And every piece in here, the Hilburn fuel injection setup, the old water pump, the radiator, the expansion tank, all of that stuff is original to this car from the 1960s. The fiberglass front end, all of this stuff was done by Tom Hands in the late 60s as they were really getting serious about running this thing in C gas. You look on the inside, it's got some Volkswagen bucket seats. It's got some vintage gauges and custom panels. It's got so many very cool old school details, and it's basically untouched. This is an ultimate survivor drag car. It's got magnesium American front runners on it with Firestone bi-sply tires, 5-spoke wheels on the back with M&H slicks, and they've been running this thing hard. It's got a T10 4-speed in it, and they've been actually taking this thing to the drag strip, launching it hard, trying to get it dialed in. But just like any race car, new or old, they got some bugs they're working out of it. But I'm looking forward to seeing this thing blasting down the drag strip very soon. Check out these two unrestored Mustang fastbacks. We got a 1969 and this 1970 Mach 1. This thing's got a pretty serious looking motor under the hood, gold Moroso valve covers of course, centerline wheels, got some slicks on the back, really cool looking car with original paint. And then sitting right in front of it is another original paint car. This one's a 69 Mustang Mach 1. It's got all the cool tricks. You can see it's got centerline wheels with little front runners on it. It's got a Cobra Jet engine. It was a factory drag pack car. And best of all, this thing is 26,000 miles, original engine, original paint. Now this is a vintage rear engine dragster. This is not a modern chassis, but you can see the build quality on this thing is top notch. This was a pro-built car, and you can see that all of the hand lettering and airbrush work is still intact. You can see on the side here it says R. Higley's Little Blue Express. You can also see Big Al's Toy Boxes represented here and lots of other sponsor decals, and we see a class designation of SC for Super Comp. So this thing was an NHRA Super Comp dragster. We can see that it's raced in the 1990s. We've got some event decals here from Englishtown, Gainesville, and other tracks from 1993. So this thing was very active and racing at some pretty big points races. But you can see that they've added to the bodywork here. They've actually added a radiator, a side mount radiator, because these class cars, they would have to hot lap these things. So a radiator was kind of a must. Out back, it's got a complete Strange Engineering rear end. It's based off of a 9-inch Ford, but you can see it's got back braces. It's narrowed, obviously. It's got Strange Engineering axles. It's ready to go. And from what I've been able to gather, this car had a Mopar engine on it, which is definitely unusual. Most of the time you see a dragster, it's going to have a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy on it. Then it's got a set of centerline wheels on the back and some spindle mount centerline wheels on the front. Definitely an old school combination, something you'd likely see in the 80s or early 90s. And it's still up and rolling on that combo, so it's really cool that the paint survived and these wheels and tires survived. And the owner was asking $4,000 or best offer. This would be a great deal for somebody. It looks like it was recently NHRA certified, so I'm sure that this thing would pass tech at the local track and give you plenty of enjoyment for just a few $1,000s. One of my favorite cars was this 1939 Pontiac Coupe, and this thing is a true survivor from the 60s. This car got my attention because of the flaky blue paint, but as I started looking, I started seeing some serious old school details, and let's go through some of that now. So you can see this car has a little bit of a gasser stance, and it's not real crazy, it's not way up in the air, but you can see underneath it does have some suspension modifications to give it that stance. Up front, it's got a Ford-style I-beam axle with a transverse leaf spring. You can see that there's some old chrome and painted details here. And then out back is where it gets really extravagant. It's got a 57 Pontiac-style rear end, and you can see the entire rear end housing has been chrome plated. This thing has custom ladder bars, which are also chrome plated. You can see it's got covers over the leaf springs. It's got some old coilover style shocks on the back. I mean, this thing's got all sorts of high-end details considering the era it was built. And then as we back up, we can see the outward appearance of this thing. It's got a real cool look. You can see the tire and wheel combination is cool. It's actually got a set of really rare wheels. These are Dragmaster slotted mags. And notice it has 6 slots instead of the normal 5. These things are getting really hard to find, and this one's got a real nice set of them on it. It's got 14s on the front and 15s on the back. Pie crust slicks on the back. It's got a great looking stance, great looking tire and wheel combo. Inside you can see a very nicely preserved interior. It's diamond stitched with stainless steel buttons, lots of them on the seats, the door panels, Everything's got black with buttons. Then you can see a wood grain dash with a custom gauge panel that's filled with Stewart Warner green line gauges. You got a wood grain 3-bar steering wheel, a tack up on the dash. I mean, the interior in this car is flawless. And then under the hood, we've got an Oldsmobile V8. This is a 58 through 64 engine platform, and it's either a 371 or a 394. I'm not sure which without looking at some numbers. But it's got an Edelbrock 2.4 intake on it. It's got some Edelbrock fin aluminum valve covers, and then you can see it's got some homemade headers that go over the frame rail and into the fender wells. This thing has got so many cool homebrew parts on it. Now, this thing was for sale. It was out here on the street with all the other cars that get traded around on. This thing was priced at $19,500, and I feel like that's an excellent deal on a true survivor. Now, this Fiat has got some serious history. I don't know the history yet. That's something I want to track down. But this thing was supposedly based in the Atlanta area, so it probably ran at tracks like Yellow River. It may have even ran at Paradise back in the day. But this thing is so cool, and it's an extremely good survivor. You can see it's got magnesium spindle mount wheels on the front with the old tires. You can see the old paint, the lettering, it's all intact. Only a few updates have been made on this car. So when this car was brought out of long-term storage, a fresh small block was put together and they put a regular automatic transmission in it. But what's really cool is that they kept the clutch flight that was in this car. So you can see over here to the side, they've got the clutch flight on display, and that's just a piece of history in itself. So really neat combination here. This old car has got a lot of cool pieces on it. The upholstery on the inside, just every piece of it is cool. And then when you look underneath it, I mean, it's got some pretty good fabrication. It's got a chrome axle up front with a transverse leaf and lever action shocks. And then out back, it's got coil springs with these custom little pockets on a big old rear end. Just a neat combination. This thing was probably a wild ride back in the 60s. I'm sure it was sketchy with that suspension. I'm sure it was sketchy with whatever was powering this thing. It was probably too much to handle. But right now, it's just a really cool piece of history, and it's great to look at, especially on the back of that ramp truck. Now, here's a really neat old drag car. This thing looks like it's fresh off the showroom floor. I think you could change the wheels out and take this to any car show out there. But check this out. This is an in-stock automatic stock eliminator car. So this thing is a 302 with a 2-barrel. Look under the hood right here. 2-barrel carburetor, bone stock 302 with just those stock eliminator tricks that they're allowed to do. And you could tell it had those super stock tricks underneath because this thing planted the tires, raised the front end up in the air, and just went down the track. Even though it didn't make a lot of horsepower, it's still pretty entertaining to watch. And this is a 55 Chevy 210 two-door sedan, and this thing is slick. It's got a great 60s stance. You can see the white headers hanging down, American torque thrust wheels on it. Nothing real crazy or exotic about it, but check out the tow vehicle. This is so cool. He's got a cameo truck pulling this 55 Chevy drag car. I'm sure while this thing was going down the road, it turned a lot of heads and got a lot of thumbs up. And he came all the way from Illinois, so quite a long trip on this very old school tow truck and drag car setup. Now, this is the Linwood Eliminator. This is the actual car, the shop car from back in the day, the Linwood Welding Special. This thing has got a blown and injected Hemi engine. It's got the top of the line everything for the 1960s. You can see this car is relatively short, but these things were state of the art from about 1960 until about 1962. And then Linwood transitioned into a new chassis style and eventually phased out altogether. This car has been at a lot of cackle fests, and it's actually made some tire smoking passes in recent years. So it's really cool to see it. I love these Linwood cars because we actually have a Linwood chassis in our shop. One of these days we'll get around to fixing it, but this is a very good example and very nicely restored. It's Don Garlett's Swamp Rat number 23. Now, this is in a long line of Top Fuel dragsters that Don Garlett's raced all across the country. This one happens to have been raced in the mid-1970s. And of course, all of Don Garlett's cars are restored beautifully, or preserved in some cases. And this one is a great example. You'll see it's still got a magnesium rear end. It's got a magnesium blower, a Crowder fuel injection system. You can see that hat has had a little bit of damage there. I'm not sure the story behind that. And this is actually an Ed Donovan all aluminum Hemi engine. And look at the cockpit here. We got gold anodized tin work. A lot of great tin work on this car. The body is beautiful. The paint is still in great shape. And you can see this car has got a killer 70s profile, that long nose, laid back roll bar, short wing, and of course those motorcycle style spoke front wheels and a wide front axle. All of those items went away in the 80s and 90s. This is a great piece of 70s drag racing history. By the way, this car ran a low ET of a 577 in the quarter mile at 247.25 miles per hour, and it won the IHRA World Championship in 1976 and a big time match race in 1977 where Garlits beat Shirley Muldowney in the CBS Challenge of the Sexes at Orange County International Raceway. Speaking of Shirley Muldowney, that's actually the other car that's lined up in the entryway of the museum. Now, this is a much more modern car. This is probably more of a 90s type combination, but still very modern compared to that 70s car from Don Garlits. You can see this car has 2 fuel pumps, it has 2 magnetos, very serious combination here. Big tall wing, modern bodywork with the front spoiler, narrow front axles, solid front wheels. You know, this is much more of what we see today. Even though today's cars have even more advancements, this is a far cry from that 1970s car that we looked at earlier. You can see the crazy paint job on this thing. We've got scales, we've got endless lines, we got lace, we got candy colors, fades, all sorts of lettering and different designs. It's just a wild car and it definitely looks good out in the sun. It also has a really cool tinted Lexan scoop that goes with the tinted Lexan that's used on the body. Krager wheels, perfect stance. This is a cool one. Now this is a textbook 55 Chevy Gasser, and this thing's been together for a long time. I remember seeing pictures of this car on the internet many years ago, and it just burned in my mind of the perfect Gasser. You can see it's big block Chevy, tunnel ram and 2 4s, velocity stacks, the old Axle coil, white headers. It's got all the elements right there. And then you back up and see that stance. I mean, this thing is right on the money. The back tires and wheels sticking out ever so slightly. Front end tucked up under there. Good straight axle combination. Perfect stance. Flat black paint. This thing is just right. The Abbott crew was in town. First we'll see Tom's red and white 55. And then we got Scott's 2-timer drag car. This thing's had all sorts of different engine and transmission combinations. It's had different suspension combinations. You can see currently it's got Super Trick wheels and a cool nose down stance. Pro stock style hood. Just a really good combination of 70s style parts. One of my favorite 55 Gassers of all time is Greg Porter's Night Stalker 55 2-door hardtop. And this thing is a legit 1960s Gasser that he has put back on the track without doing very much to update the chassis and suspension. He has updated the roll cage. He obviously has a serious engine combination in this thing. It's got a Gene Fulton small block. And check out the heads on this thing. It's got double humps cast into those aftermarket heads. It's got a really good look. Tunnel ram and 2 4s. This thing makes a bunch of horsepower and he puts it to the ground pretty well, even though this thing is all old school underneath. You can see now it's got some really cool lettering. All the perfect patina on the magnesium wheels. The stance is right on the money. And then you got some old school wheelie bars. And he put this thing to the test in the 1/8 mile and quarter mile. He actually changed the rear end gear while he was at the track so he could run it through the quarter, and ran a 9 flat and 145 miles an hour. Now we see 55 Chevy Gassers all the time, but you don't see a mid-50s Ford Gasser. And this one's got a tilt front end, it's got a straight axle, but this thing has a really unique combination. This is an MEL, and that stands for Mercury Edsel Lincoln. They had their own line of engines in the late 50s, and these things were big cubic inches. And this particular one is a 430 cubic inch that came out around 1958, and it was a hot rod combination. That's where the term Hot Rod Lincoln came from. And this one has some really cool pieces, including a homemade dual quad intake. You can see it's got 2 4-barrel carburetors on it. This thing's got some great hand lettering, beautifully done. Very neat lettering on this car and a great overall look. It's not a big flashy paint job. It doesn't have a crazy high stance. You know, this is a very tasteful car with a lot of good pieces on it. I love running across cars like this one. This 55 Chevy, you can see it's got this sort of red-orange paint on it. You can tell it's been on there a while. And look at some of the parts that are used here. It's got a small block Chevy with those chrome 327 valve covers, 2 4s, white headers, no inner fenders of course, and look at the stance on it. It's not way up in the air, it's not crazy. This is what you would see in the 1960s. It's got Mickey Thompson Raider style wheels, it's got bias ply tires, and this thing is just right. You see it doesn't have a front bumper, it has a teardrop style scoop, and then on the inside there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's got a factory steering wheel, some gauges hanging underneath. The car itself has a real nice look to it. The paint's got a nice finish on it. And then when we go up here, we see that he's got a photo album with pictures of this car from 1965. You can see it's got traction bars underneath. You can see all the similarities here. This has got a killer backstory, and look at this. 67 Chevelle flat towing this 55 Chevy. There you can see the tow bar is flipped up. This is such a cool car with cool history, and I love the old photos. It really tells the story of this thing. Next up is another historic car, this time a 1940 Willis Gasser. This car is immaculate. You can see just from a quick glance that this thing has a very slick paint job. You can see that somebody has really spent a lot of time making this car perfect. And that person is Mark DeWalt. Now, he's owned this car for almost 50 years, and he bought it when he was 14 years old. So if you do the math on that, he bought this thing in the 1970s when it was pretty much just a used up old race car. But all these years later, he's put this thing back to the way it used to be in its heyday in the late 1960s. This is an iconic car that has tons of history in the Northeast. It was based out of Pennsylvania and raced at tracks like Vargo, US 30 in York, Pennsylvania. All over the Northeast, this thing was a dominating combination. It ran in D gas. It had a 301 cubic inch small block Chevrolet and fuel injection. You know, it had the normal combination for back in the day, except they didn't put a bunch of fiberglass body parts on this car. Instead, they used all steel. The steel front end was put together and then leaded to fill the seams and then painted in a beautiful black paint job. And all of that stuff is still together today. Now, this car has been worked over. Obviously, this car has been restored completely, but it still uses a lot of original parts, including the original interior door panels, those diamond stitched with buttons. That's all old school stuff that was original to this car. Another original piece is the Moon hydraulic throttle pedal, and there's a lot of other stuff that survived that was actually part of the restoration to put this car back together. So this car now has a very serious 434 cubic inch small block Chevy. It has a Hilborn fuel injection setup, and it looks just like an old mechanical system, but it's actually got electronic guts. So this is a really cool looking system. It doesn't look obvious that it's EFI, but this thing probably runs a lot better than the old mechanical setup. And it's got a 5-speed manual transmission behind it, a quick change rear end, and check out the rear bumper with the wheelie bars. This is original to this car. Lots of great history here, and we're going to dive a little deeper into the history of this car and bring you a full video feature on this thing, telling you about its early days of drag racing in Pennsylvania, as well as its time where it sat dormant for many years and its time in full restoration mode. So stay tuned for that. This was a very great car, and I was happy to be able to make a lap around it and show it to you guys. Look at this homemade trailer that's made out of a camper top, some tin, a little bit of plywood, but it is perfect for an old front engine rail. That's just how they used to haul them back in the day. And of course, if there's a gasser race, there's going to be a Henry J. And this one is a really cool setup. This one's called Little Henry. You can see it's got the engine set way back, and this thing's serious. It's got a Mopar combination with a blower, a 4-port Hilborn fuel injector. I mean, this thing makes big time horsepower, but he's still working the bugs out of it. This thing is super cool. It's got a little bit of drag racing history. You can see it's got a steel front end that's been welded together, And then out back, it's got radius quarter panels. And this is a later Henry J. It's got tail lights and a trunk, but you can also see some wheelie bars. It's got a round tube bumper on the back. But the cool thing about this is it was built in the same garage as the Hemi Hurricane 1940 Willis. Now, I've done a full feature on the history of that car. It was a dominating car in A-gas in the 1960s. It was a cool piece of Georgia drag racing history. And this old Henry J was built in the same shop, and I think that's super cool. Now, here's a cool one for the Mopar guys. This is a 64 Dodge, and it's done up in the famous Ram Chargers paint scheme. You can see the Hodges Dodges on the bottom there, 1963 stock Eliminator. They got the split paint on the steel wheels on the back, and aside from the front wheels, this thing looks pretty much period correct for the 1960s. Back in the 70s and 80s, you would have seen a lot of cars like this at the drag strip. This is a 65 Chevelle, two-door post. Now you can see they have added a cowl induction hood. Get a couple of points docked for that as far as originality. But check out that engine. It's got a serious big block Chevy with aluminum cylinder heads, big Holly up top. It's got some super trick wheels on it, big tires on the back, cool 70s stance. This is what you'd have seen in super stock and modified production back in the day. Now here's a pretty traditional gasser. This is a 40 Ford Coupe. You can see this thing's got a cool tank up front that looks like a homemade moon tank. Then we've got a small block Chevy with a wind blower, two big 4-barrel carburetors, and a Hilburn style scoop. You can see the stance on this car is right on the money. It's got skinny slots, black steel wheels on the back, no running boards. This is just a pure old hot rod. Mike Finnegan's Blasphemy 55 Chevy. Check out the blown and injected Hemi engine. This thing makes killer horsepower. It's got a manual transmission. It's got a crazy front suspension setup, and he's got this thing dialed in. After some major wheel stands on drag week, I think he's got this thing figured out. Now this is a pretty serious setup here. We got a Ford engine that looks like it's 427 based. It's got aluminum heads, mechanical fuel injection. You can see the moon tank hanging right out in the middle of the grill. This thing is a little bit rough around the edges, but is a wild old school drag car. It has major weight reduction in the form of holes drilled in the bumper and the radiator support. You don't see a lot of these 65 Fairlanes out there. You see a lot of the 64s because of the Thunderbolts, but these 65s made some good drag cars too. And we go to the back, we got even more holes and a parachute hanging off of it. This is a really cool combination. Sitting next to it was an old Ford truck, and you can see a lot more holes being drilled here. And then we've got Halabrand equipped lettered on the quarter panel here, but check these out. These are actually American Racing magnesium wheels. These are some pretty rare pieces. And then we've got some cool lettering on here, steel wheels on the front, flip front end with a Lexan scoop that's tinted, tunnel ram, 2.4s. This thing has a big tall stance, fender well headers, moon tank, the whole 9 yards. As far as the stance and color combination goes, this might be my favorite gasser at Six Smokies. This little Chevy 2 two-door post has got a real slick and clean paint job. You can see that lace with bright orange, maybe that's Hugger orange that's on this thing. It's just got a single 4-barrel carburetor, but it's got a pretty serious engine combination. I love the down-low stance. It's not way up in the air, but this thing totally means business. Here's another nice trailer setup, and then we've got a very well-sorted gasser. This thing runs on drag week and seek week, and he's put a lot of laps on this car. You can see it's got some big bullhorn exhaust, and check this out, big block Chevy, blown and injected with that billet blower, shop blower on there. This thing makes big time horsepower, and it's got a little more of an AFX look, but it totally qualifies as the gasser in these rules. I love a good hot rod Corvette, and this one is pretty wild. You can see on the inside here, metal flake steering wheel. It's got multiple shifters in there, roll cage. I mean, this is a cool combination, and look at that blower and injector hat standing real tall out of the engine bay. And this is all put together with an LS engine combination. This is a blend of a new engine combination with old school Roots supercharger and injector hat on an old school gasser. Now this one has super stock markings on the sail panel there, but this thing qualifies as a gasser because it's a retro type build. You can see it's got a wild 70s style psychedelic paint job. It's got some skinny centerline wheels on the front, bigger ones on the back. It's got a lot of good old school pieces on it, but it does have modern horsepower, and you can see on the door Hot Rod Guy Garage. You should go check out his channel. You can see the entire build on this car and several others that he's worked on through the years. Again, this one isn't a gasser, but it's a really cool old school combination. Small block, Mickey Thompson valve covers, tunnel ram and 2.4s, Hugger orange with white stripes, Krager wheels. I mean, this thing is the quintessential street machine from the 1970s. Now this little Ford Falcon called the Hoopty Coupe is actually a Southeast Gassers Association legal C-gas car. Now, they've made some changes to it to make it able to do this drag and drive event, and you can see here they're still working on it in the pits on race day. So this thing has got big time Ford horsepower, it's got a lot of good pieces on it, and they're going to see what they can do on this 7-day journey. Up next is a 1940 Willis Coupe, and you can see this thing has the perfect traditional gasser stance. We got little kidney bean wheels on the front, slotted mags on the back. It's got a blower and 2.4s up here, small block Chevy engine. This thing makes great horsepower, and it's got the perfect look. This wild and crazy Model A coupe is called the Organ Grinder, and for good reason, because this thing is definitely not the most comfortable vehicle to drive on a long trip. But Reggie Moore drives this thing all the time. He goes on sick week, he goes on drag week. He's put thousands and thousands of miles on this crazy Model A coupe. You can see it's got a Bel Air dash in there that's been cut down, and this thing is pretty rough around the edges, but he is not afraid to let the clutch loose and take off with that big block Chevy. He's put this thing almost straight up and down before, but I think he's got it calmed down a little bit to survive the week of punishment. Here we got a 55 Chevy, and under the hood we've got a small block Chevy, tunnel ram, 2.4s, mailbox scoop, and some gold Moroso valve covers. White fender well headers are a must. Then when we back up, we see it's got a real nice stance. Skinny slotted mags on the front, bigger ones on the back. You got holes in the Lexan quarter windows. This thing's just got a cool 60s look to it. It wouldn't be a gasser event without a couple of Willis Coupes, and this one's designated for AA gas, but we'll see up here it doesn't have a supercharger. It's got a relatively mild looking small block Chevy, but you'll see it's got a round tube chassis. This is a pretty serious race car. One piece fiberglass front end. You can see the paint job on this thing is immaculate. Beautiful candy gold paint, Krager SS wheels, slicks are sticking out of the rear fenders just right. This is a great looking setup. This is an Impala station wagon, by the way, and it has an all aluminum 427 based big block Chevy, and notice the magneto is in the front. Notice it has a distributor in the back, and it's pretty much just a dummy for the tack drive. But up here it has a front drive distributor setup that is crazy. Super rare setup. This thing has tons of rare parts on it, and he's out here beating on it for a whole week at Six Smokies. As we take a look inside, we got a Moroso tack, we got a cool looking Lakewood bar in there, slick paint job on this car, red tinted windows, Firestone cheater slicks, and you can see another pair of those Kreitz Maggie wheels on the back of this car. All right, now this is what I'm talking about. I love old drag cars, and we've got the king of the Fords right here. Now, I had to do a little bit of studying to try to figure out the history, because I just love the history of old drag cars, and I knew that I've seen some pictures of a Phil Bonner Ford Thunderbolt that had been flipped, wrecked badly back when it was new. And I had to figure out whether this car we're looking at here was a tribute or whether it had been rebuilt out of the crashed, crumpled sheet metal of that original car. So as I got to looking, Phil Bonner actually had two Ford Thunderbolts, and the one we're looking at today is neither of those cars. So the first Thunderbolt he had was a very early production. He got it in 1963 and hit the ground running, started racing this car hard. And during this time, he had a 64 Ford Falcon that he was racing, also 427 powered. And while Phil was out racing his Falcon, one of his crew guys, Jimmy Evans, took the Thunderbolt out to Paradise Drag Strip in Calhoun, Georgia, had a mishap and ended up rolling the car, completely destroyed it. There's pictures of it here. You can see the body was just mangled. And as the story goes, Jimmy Evans was never to be seen again. Phil never saw him again, was never able to talk to him about what happened. All he knew was that his car was destroyed and it was time to pick up the pieces. So ultimately, he ordered another one. He got a second Thunderbolt, and a lot of them got cut up into AFX cars and altered wheelbase cars. And that's exactly what happened with the number 2 Thunderbolt it actually got the wheelbase altered a little bit. It raced under a couple different identities and ultimately sat in a barn for many, many years, not too far away from Phil Bonner's house. He knew the car was there, but could never come to an agreement on a price, so he ended up building his own. And that's what we're looking at here today in Dawsonville. This is a very authentic recreation of a 1964 Thunderbolt. This car is built with authentic parts, and it's built with a very authentic look. We'll see that it's got some American Racing torque thrust wheels, which in a lot of cases these cars just ran steel wheels. But other than that, this thing looks like it's straight out of 1964. You can see it's got a lot of cool hand lettering that's just like the original car. And even though this particular car doesn't have a lot of drag racing history with Phil, it still has a lot of those stories wrapped up in it. The stories of the original Thunderbolt, the stories of the second Thunderbolt, and all of the different Ford drag cars that were campaigned by Phil Bonner throughout the 1960s. This car continues to tell those stories, and it's still in the Bonner family, so that's really cool. Here's another Willis Gasser, this time a 1940 coupe, and you can see this one's a little rough around the edges. It's got a little bit of rust, quite a bit of patina, and a lot of hand lettering on here. You can see it's got some old school stickers. It's got a great Gasser stance with slotted mags, those slicks poking out. I mean, this thing's got all the right stuff. Here we go with a Ford Gasser. You can see that front end is flipped forward, revealing a big block Ford, single carburetor, nothing real exotic looking here, but a pretty stout combination. Wyatt fender well headers is just natural on a Gasser, and this thing's got a real cool look on the inside too. Some low back bucket seats. It's got an old 3-spoke steering wheel. You can see the stainless trim is in good shape, and it's got B-gas markings on it. I think the winner for best trailer has to go to Don Moyer. He's got this killer old travel trailer. Look at those swoopy fenders. And then sitting right here, magnesium wheel just laying here. And then look at what he's driving. This old school Corvette, I mean, this thing's got weathered paint. It's got a cool stance. You can see those slicks poking way out of there. It's got some great old lettering on it. It has A modified sports car designations on it, but obviously this thing's running in the Gasser class. It's got a cool plexiglass scoop, mechanical fuel injection stack sticking up out of it. The old paint has a lot of flaws, but it also has a lot of character, and it makes this a really special 57 Corvette Gasser. Next up, we got an old Chevrolet Gasser. You can see the name on it here, Garbage That Barfed. This thing's got a pretty crazy looking paint job, and then under the hood, we got Chevrolet horsepower, big block Chevy, tunnel ram, 2 4s, and this thing sounded really serious. Here's a pretty cool one, a 33 Willis. You can see last penny lettered on the quarter panels, and then under the hood, small block Chevy, pretty killer looking setup here. You can see blower straps. That means you're pretty serious if you got those. Blower, 2 4s, and the Hillborn scoop. This car's got a great looking setup, and I'm excited to see what it does going down the track. Here's another one that's a little rough around the edges, but it is super cool. This is a Hemi-powered Ford Thunderbird. You can see those stacks poking right out of the hood scoop. This thing has so much character to it. It has some flaky paint, it has some cool lettering, and even though it doesn't have a nose-up Gasser stance, this thing's got some serious attitude. Now you guys know I love old drag cars, and this is a great example. This is Jim Kennett's 1980 Plymouth Volare. This thing had Hemi horsepower back in the day, and it was a serious combination. This thing was built by Don Hardy Race Cars, and as the story goes, this car was actually built for Bob Glidden when he was running Mopars for that little blip of time in the late 70s. But when he went back to Ford, this car ended up going to Georgia with Jim Kennett, and he raced all over the country with this car and was very successful with it. Now, Jim also raced a lot of other Mopars through the years. They all had this very similar paint job, similar lettering on the door, and similar performance. He was a huge contender in Super Stock, Pro Stock, and many other classes through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I always love seeing a well-executed Gasser, and this 41 Willis Coupe checks all the boxes for me. Now, what was even cooler was that I got to meet the owner and talk to him. He was familiar with the channel, and we talked for a good bit about the history of this car. And even though this thing doesn't have any documented drag racing history, I thought it was cool that he took a pro street car, a car with a narrowed rear end and big wheel tubs, sat down low, and he made it into a period correct Gasser. So he put the straight axle under the front. He put a wide rear end with some really cool traction bars. He put some magnesium wheels on it. So that's another thing we got to talk about here. So the rears are Halbrand. They're pretty standard issue. I mean, they're still expensive. They're cool to look at, but you see them quite a bit on drag cars. But the fronts are actually Wells wheels, not to be confused with Weld wheels. And these things were made in Canada, and very few of them were made. You hardly ever see them. They're extremely lightweight. You can see they don't have a lot of extra casting around the windows. Very thin, very light, and extremely rare. And he's got them in use on this 41 Willis. And then under that one-piece fiberglass front end is a serious big block Chevy combination. This thing is aluminum, and it has a huge Littlefield magnesium blower on it. Two big old carburetors that he's converted to run on E85, and he's got a high tower 4-speed in it. This thing has a super cool look to it, flat black with a bunch of cool lettering and pinstriping on it. And the best thing about it, at least in my opinion, is that he drove it to and from the show. Now, this next car wasn't parked front and center. It didn't have ropes around it, but it is one of the rarest and coolest cars on the property. This is a 1965 Mercury Comet, and it's a factory-built drag car. Actually, it was built by Bill Strop. He's the one who was responsible for the AFX and BFX Mercury Comets, and this one is of the BFX variety. AFX cars had 427s, BFX cars had 289s. Now, this particular one has the Cobra top end setup, which consists of Weber carburetors. It is a killer setup. A lot of these BFX cars ran very aggressive rear end ratios, well into the fives, and this is a great example of one of these cars. These cars were extremely rare from day one, and a lot of them got cut up and turned into altered wheelbase cars and got scrapped for other cars or may have gotten wrecked. So there's very few of these things still in existence. And this one is legit. It's got the 289 engine. It has fiberglass body panels. So these things had a fiberglass hood, fiberglass fenders, fiberglass bumpers, and fiberglass doors. And a lot of them even had Lexan windows. So these things were weight reduced to the max. Now, I don't have any history on this specific car, but I do know that it was restored and raced in the 80s and 90s by Dave Coons. Now, he did the paint to match his other factory drag race Mercury Comet, which is an AFX car. So he had a matching pair of AFX and BFX 65 Mercury Comets. Unfortunately, the matching pair of cars got separated, but I'm glad to see this BFX car out and about getting seen by the public.